G'day guys, welcome to another episode of Prado 120 Adventures. This is episode number 10. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of modifying my Prado. It's been an awesome journey and I've learned a lot. I hope you've learned a lot. Hey, thanks for all your support. Thanks for smashing that subscribe button and liking and commenting. It really helps out with the channel. Today we're going to be doing another big project on the Prado. This is going to be fixing up some of the problems I've had with the rear end. You would have seen previously in another video around there somewhere, I put some longer shocks in the rear, which really helps to allow the rear to flex out a lot more. Since I've had it sort of loaded up and taken on big trips, the rear end does sag quite a lot. So I'm going to be putting some new springs in the rear and showing you how to do that. It's not a very difficult process, but if you're like me and you're working in a driveway and don't have access to a huge amount of tools and hoists and whatnot, then I'll show you a good way of doing that. While we're also there, we're going to be addressing another problem that I had with doing a larger lift. Once you flex it out, you do realize that the factory rubber brake lines are at about their limit when you start really flexing the rear end. So I've gone all out. I'm finally going to update it because really rubber hoses shouldn't last 460,000 Ks. They're probably swelling out like balloons every time I smash my foot on the brake. I've got some extended brake lines. The Prado has 6 brake lines in total. 2 for the front, 2 for the rear, and 2 that go from the body, so from the chassis down to the rear axle. And those last ones are the ones that are really, like, you can tell they're at their limit when you drop the rear axle and see how far they go, so they definitely need replacing. The ones in the rear, again, they don't stretch, like it's a fixed length, they don't move, but just because they've been there for so long, they're going anyway. And the fronts definitely do need replacing because the front flexes a lot more now and it has a lot higher ride height. So all those will be going in. The other thing we're going to be doing is handbrake shoes. These, in theory, you should never have to do your handbrake shoes because they are not contacting anything while you're driving, and then when you're driving, all they do is just a static surface against a static surface. So realistically, they should never wear down because four-wheel drive, you get mud and stuff in there and that eats away the brake shoes. And then when you go to pull your handbrake up, there's no contact there and you have to readjust it and pull it out, and then it wears more, and etc, etc. So mine have been pretty worn and I've adjusted them a few times, but I'm still getting it bad. So I've got new brake shoes here. They're pretty cheap to get, so it is a little bit finicky getting springs and things to line up with the handbrake mechanism, but we're going to attempt it anyway because, you know, what's the worst that could happen? You know, no handbrake. It doesn't have a handbrake at the moment. So, oh, the other thing is these ones. These little dog bones that you can get from a company called ATP. These are supposed to fix the handbrake issues that you have and allow the handbrake shoes to spread out more and engage more. So really you shouldn't be relying on a smaller section of the pad. It'll actually grab onto a larger section. Hopefully they should do anything, you know, worst comes to worst, they do exactly the same as before, so worth trying out. The final thing I'm going to be doing is replacing some of the body mounts. If you follow my Facebook or Instagram, you would have seen that I've already replaced the very front body mounts. The body mounts on the Prados, there's 8 or 10 in total. So they go down the side of the car, and there's 2 that sit like right on top of the chassis, but you need to remove and get other stuff and it's a bit finicky to get to them. So I'm not bothering with them, but all the others I'm going to be replacing. So the front ones, I'll put up some pictures now, you can see how worn they were. Also the inside diameter was quite worn out with the rubber. And when you were coming down, there was no compression of the rubber. You were just hitting the steel crush tube in the center. So there was no shock absorbance from the rubbers. And I also spaced them a little bit. I put about 6mm of steel spacer on top of them, which is, I don't need to change anything else on the car to get that to sit nicely. I had to adjust the bull bar. Unfortunately, that was a job and a half with all the corroded bolts and stuff under there, but we got there eventually. Had to raise that up a little bit because I had 6mm of it, probably about 12mm of extra gap because I had 6mm of the steel and then about 6 to 8mm of rubber that had sagged. The front's all done, ride quality is amazing, so I'm going to do the rest of them. I am missing 2 of them. I'm missing the 2 that go in front of the rear wheels, but I'm going to be showing you how to do the rest of them. So I've got all the body mounts here, there's a top bush and a bottom bush, as well as a steel crush tube. Now when you look on any parts site, they have a bolt, they have a nut that goes on the bottom, they have a crush tube, and then the two body mounts. If you go and buy all of it all together, you'll have all brand new stuff, but it's not really necessary. The bolts you can reuse, they're fine. They have a special head on them, so they have like these extra wings that come off the actual hex head. And the crush tubes, again, you can buy genuine ones, but they're just a steel tube. They do corrode. They were quite heavily corroded when I removed the front ones, so I managed to find a way to get them to thicken out. And also I've got some steel plate to go for making some spaces up as well. So I just use 3mm steel plate, and I'll just cut and fab those up to suit. So yeah, pretty big job ahead of us. The weather is not very nice at the moment. It's raining on and off, so I'm just going to get in there and start it. Probably take me a few days on and off doing work. I finally got some time to do it. Sorry that all of you have been waiting so long to see me working on the car a bit more. I've got a brand new workshop. I'm going to give you guys a tour of that pretty soon. It's a big step up from where you probably would have seen me working previously, so pretty keen to share that and show you guys how everything's set up now. There's so much more room in here. I've got some more tools, I've got some more equipment that I've slowly added to, which have either been birthday presents, Christmas presents, me breaking up coin jars to grab them. So yeah, here's all the bits going in the car, and let's go and get on with it. So welcome to under my car. It's pretty horrible and yucky under here, but it's good to get under here every once in a while and just check things out. So these are the brake lines I was telling you about that go between the chassis and the rear diff. So they are taut, very taut. For anyone who's interested, this is the rubber pipe that runs between the two fuel tanks, that big thick thing there, and that corrodes over time and eventually it'll leak. So mine's done silly amounts of kilometers and not leaked yet, but it really should be replaced. These are the springs that I'm running at the moment. They're Ironman 2-inch heavy duty coils. Not very heavy duty, to be honest, but they've got coil spacers in the top to try to give it more height. I've just realised that when I lower the axle as far as it'll go for the shockies, these just about pop out. So probably a good idea that I'm changing these out for longer coils. My awesome Scott's Rods exhaust, 3-inch turbo back, loves it. Only problem is this hanger keeps coming off while I'm four-wheel driving, and then because it's loose it rattles against that heat shield and then it makes a bit of a noise, but only on the odd occasion. But the problem is it keeps coming off, so I don't know what the go is there, but I may need to pay an exhaust shop or something to fix it up. Anyway, let's find some tools and get to work. Now it's a bit hard to show you guys exactly what's happening under here, but I'm changing over these brake lines at the rear. So I'm starting with the axle side. Learned the hard way, leave the clips on the hose lines, those thin bits of metal there, the little U-shaped ones. Leave them on while you're trying to undo the little 10mm brake hose, otherwise it just twists the metal. So they're on, that side's on, that worked okay. So now I'm just going to do the other one. Bit hard to, again, get a camera in here and show you exactly what's going on, but I'll show you what it looks like once it's done.
Day 2.
Oh, g'day guys, it's Todd here from Prado 120 Adventures, and today, no, just kidding, sorry Sam. Welcome back to another day. We're going to be working a little bit more. I stayed up late last night to get the rear brake lines in, the ones that go from the chassis down to the rear axle, and they were a bit of a hassle, so it took me a long time, and I eventually got there and finished it all, but it was too late and there wasn't much I could show you, so I'll show you how that looks now that they're all in. So that's them in there, nice and long, so they're not going to brake off. Getting them actually to sit in there, little brackets, was the hard bit, because up the top the bracket was actually a little bit small for the hose, so I had to take the bracket out and alter it a little bit, but got there in the end. Lost a fair bit of brake fluid unfortunately, so I'm going to be bleeding the whole ABS module, which is a bit of a process, but it'll be good. I can show you guys how to do it. It's not too crazy, but it is a little bit of an extra step compared to just normally bleeding the brakes. It's my Diff Breather, and I've extended. I usually have it sitting up on top of the coil up there. So today we'll be putting the rear springs in, get them sorted, then we're going to do all the brake lines, change these buggers over, they're all old and yucky. We'll bleed the brakes, and then we're going to do the handbrake shoes, and then hopefully maybe the body mounts, but we'll see how much we can get done today. So because the new coils are a little bit taller than the previous ones, you can see the height difference there, I'm going to be using some spring compressors to just shorten these a little bit, just to make them go in there easy enough. I haven't tried to fit them, so I don't know if these would fit straight in as they are, because the rear axle is dropped quite a fair way. But I'm just going to do this because that way I can guarantee it goes in there nice and easy. I'm going to show you how to use those. So I've got these spring compressors here. These are SP Tools brand. These have these two claws, and then they have a threaded rod, and one end is threaded and the other side is not threaded. So you have up here, so you can either use a spanner to grab onto that, it's probably a 17mm or something like that, or you can use a 1/2" drive bit to rotate this thing, and that'll pull these clamps towards each other. So what you want to do, I'll show you. So we'll use two, because it compresses one side or another. So we go like this, one goes on there, one goes on there, and move it like that. So you get it so that they sit nice and well. The shaft is fairly vertical. It's not going to be perfectly vertical because the springs are on an angle, but once you get it vertical enough, and you can widen it in and do it by hand, using a handy dandy tool. So this is my powered thingy bobby. It's got a proper name, wrench something. Anyway, but I've got a little adapter bit for a 1/2" drive on there. This is really good just for doing things up. You can't put a lot of force on this. You can't, tighten things right up, do wheel nuts up, that sort of thing. But for 95% of the work, it just takes that laborious sort of action out of the equation. So this can just go straight on the top there, clicks in, like that, and then we'll just tighten it up. Alright, so you can see now that started to bend that way. So that's why we have two coil compressors. So this one will go on the opposite side, about the same spot. Clamp down on that. It's about 180 degrees from the other side, and we'll tighten this one down. Now again, that side's the shorter one, so we'll do this one, and we just basically keep going until either the spring's short enough. So we'll probably try and go so it's similar to that, or a little bit taller. You're actually putting a lot of energy into this spring now because it's getting compressed. So if anything breaks, anything moves, anything goes wrong, it'll go boing and it'll shoot up. These bits will fly off and crack your skull open. And this spring will end up through the roof. So you do have to be fairly careful and be pretty conservative with how much you actually compress these springs. But in this case, I'm going to just keep going because I know these are quite a good spring compressor. And they're clawing quite well onto the coils as well. I've had ones where the claws on these don't quite seat on the coils, and it just feels a bit dodgy. I mean, it worked for that application, but it didn't feel right. So that's about all my tools going to be able to shorten these down to. So now I can grab a 1/2" drive ratchet or a spanner. So I'm going to try at that height, mainly because I just don't want to have to do too much more extra work. But that's decently close. So I'm going to get these into the car, see if they fit, and yeah, come along, I'll show you. One other thing I'd like to mention is with the factory bump stops that come with the Prado springs. These go obviously in the flat end and they sit in like that. And you can imagine the axle down the bottom will compress until it hits this rubber stop, and then that'll stop from going, so bump stops. However, in these springs, because they're from a different car, these don't sit in there quite nicely. I've decided I'm cutting these down, so I'm just going around with a saw, just a wood saw, and cutting away at the rubber until it fits nice and snug in there. Ta-da! So that's all cut up to fit into the cone now. Looks pretty rough, but again, you got to realize where you do need to spend effort making things look good and where you don't. And in this case, it's rubber and it fits in there nicely. So yeah, it squashes down a little bit more. Anyway, so we'll throw this one in the car and see how we go. How good's that? Actual lift. Awesome, that's all done. So I'm gonna just connect up the sway bar and the shockies again and go from there. So I've just reattached the sway bar to the axle there. So there's two bolts that hold it on, one on the top, one on the bottom. And I've got both sides on loosely. And again, with the axle right down, these pins, there's just so much tension on the, so much angle on these sway bar links that yeah, you can see why they fail. And because I've got the shocks on, this is now, when I'm off-road, this will be the lowest the axle will sit. So you can just run it and just go, oh yeah, it should be right. But being me, I can't leave well enough alone. Where these two bolts go through that bracket, I'm going to build a little spacer. And then just use either the same bolts or longer bolts to attach everything up, just to try and bring that sway bar forward, which should bring that horizontal section forward and then allow less angle on that pin. So yeah, cue the fabricating montage. So there's the finished spacer. It's probably about 10 mil, and maybe 10 mil is not enough to completely alleviate the stress on it, but it'll alleviate some stress. And really, I mean, for everything here's free. You know, I've already got the metal and I've already got the bolts, so if I can alleviate a little bit of stress for free, then you may as well. So here's the finished product. There's the sway bar link. It's got its extra little nut in there. You see how even at full droop, the sway bar link isn't under that much angle. And then down there, you can see the little spacer I made up. So it's not a huge amount, but that plus the two nuts in there should help to keep the sway bar links going for a little while longer. So I'm pretty happy with how that's all turned out. Shiny brake line at the back. Just ran the rear diff spacer up to the same spot. Yeah, it's right up there, like right underneath the body. I don't think it's going to be any problem up there. I've been running it like that for the last 5 years and it hasn't been a problem.